Okay, gang. Again, this is Erin McKinley. I manage our reader engagement program. We are just about to get started. It is 10 a.m. right on the nose. I think we have a decent amount of attendees here, so we won't waste anyone's time. Again, you are here with the newsroom at home behind the photo. Um, and if you do have any questions, like I said, please go ahead and use that Q&A function on your toolbar. Anything else, you're more than welcome to send a chat. But we're gonna, like I said, go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce you to Sarah Dussault. She is the managing editor here for sports, visuals, and features at Bay Area News Group. And Sarah, go ahead.
Thank you, Erin. Welcome, everyone. We are very happy that you're spending your morning with us today. We have some compelling photographs and the stories behind them to share with you. One thing you're going to learn from our photojournalists is that pressing the shutter button or having the proper gear is only a fraction of the job. Being prepared, being intuitive, taking risks, and having an artistic vision is what will get you impactful photographs. These three shooters are going to tell us how they make the magic happen. We have Karl Mondon, who will show us what it has been like to cover California wildfires for the last 30 years, as well as what it's like to get stuck in Guerneville during the 2018 floods. Jane Tyska will talk about the trials and tribulations of being a drone photographer, as well as the safety precautions photojournalists must take in the field. And then we're going to hear some fun stories of what it's like to cover the 49ers, the Warriors, the Giants, and other teams from Jose Fajardo. After that, we will take your questions, so please stay on until the end. But for now, let me introduce you to Karl Mondon, one of our news photographers based in the South Bay. Karl?
Okay, let's see if I can get the screen. Who's got the screen now? Is it Sharon? I mean, Erin?
Yeah, well, you just
Erin,
introduced yourself right now. You don't have to share yet.
Okay, so anyway, my name is Karl Mondon. I've been working at the Mercury News for about 8 years after about 2 decades at the Contra Costa Times. I love photojournalism. It's something got into my bones when I was in high school, really. I picked up a darkroom, started working on image making, and then got myself my first Olympus OM1 camera and started out shooting spots around San Francisco where I grew up. Got a picture in the, won a photo contest in the San Francisco Chronicle. Got my first published photograph of a Great Dane sitting at attention at the Sausalito at a bike rack. I'd show it to you if I could find the damn thing. But since then, I've been working first in Santa Barbara at the News Press and moved up here. So it's been an interesting ride, and I'd like to show some pictures with you guys.
All right, thank you, Karl. Jane.
Hey, good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. Thanks so much for joining us. It's you guys, the readers, who we do this all for. And we also have some fellow photojournalists and friends here today, so welcome everyone. I've been a staff photojournalist at the Bay Area News Group for 23 years, mostly based out of Oakland, but I photograph all over the region and have had some national and international assignments over the years. One of my favorites was going to Bhutan and Nepal to cover the migration of Bhutanese refugees to Oakland. I'm also an FAA licensed drone pilot and the only female photojournalist on staff. My family's from the Bronx. I grew up in New Jersey, a Springsteen fan, but I love this city so much more. And my first assignment, which is amazingly documented here, I don't even know who shot that picture, was on a kindergarten field trip to the Bronx Zoo. I always had a camera, and I learned to shoot on the streets of New York since I was a kid. An incredible visual arena. There was a picture on every corner. Really glad to be here.
Thanks, Jane. I'd love to see your pictures from the zoo sometime.
Me too.
5-year-old Jane. All right. Next up is Jose Fajardo, or you might know him as Fuzzy Joe on Instagram.
Hi, good morning. I grew up on a farm in Brentwood. I've always loved to draw, so I went to school to become a graphic designer. I had to take a photography class at Los Medanos College for my course requirement. And in 1994, I got a part-time job as a photo tech at a small newspaper called the Ledger-Dispatch in Antioch. I loved working at the paper so much that I spent all my time there and the unfortunate part was that I failed my photography class because of that. I didn't turn in my final project, which was a flash assignment. So the staff at the paper took me under their wing, and he taught me everything I needed to know about photojournalism. And in 1997, I was hired as a staff photographer covering community news in East County. In 1999, I was transferred over to our sister paper, the Contra Costa Times in Walnut Creek. And ever since then, I've traveled across the country, covering news and sports, and it's been a heck of a ride. I currently now live in Martinez with my wife, Frances, and my son, JJ. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. All right, let's get started. Karl, you're our first presenter. Why don't you take over the screen?
I will go ahead and grab the screen here and let's work through the bugs here and see if we can get up to speed here. How are we looking? Are we up to doc?
You're up, yep.
Okay, great. So, well, do you all remember the time when people only wore face masks because of the smoke from California's wildfires? I'm gonna take you back to last year when the Kincaid fire was burning Sonoma County, and I'm gonna work through some other fires I've covered over the years, and including the Camp Fire. So this first photograph was taken of Lord Snort. He's the steel mascot sculpture at a winery up in the area there. And before I talk more about it, I'd like to just take you behind the scenes a little bit here and show you what was involved in getting up there. This fire, thankfully, was not a fatal fire. This was, but it was forced a lot of people, it affected a lot of folks. It was the largest evacuation Sonoma County had ever had. They, I think 190,000 people were asked to leave cities like Healdsburg and Windsor, which just left empty. And so we were up there to cover it because the smoke was impacting our area, and you know, people with high reader interest. So Sarah sent us up there to cover it up. But when you're covering fires like this one, it's so remote, so far back in the woods that you can't even consider getting up to the fire crews that are doing the work. And this is what you really want to get as a photojournalist. You want to get in there and capture the human element of this battle or the impacts. So you're left to kind of photograph other things such as the helicopters and the air attack. This one was just an interesting frame because of the way the light hit another rainbow shot. But as that day ebbed, we knew that there was going to be an opportunity after the sunset that things were going to be much different, and the fire was going to be coming to us. The winds that night were extremely ferocious. Hoping you can hear the audio here, but it was coming down hard, and getting shots of the wineries first being impacted was the first thing we saw. But you know, I'm having trouble finding firefighters who are actually engaged with the oncoming fire. So I'm looking around and finding some winery workers are trying to protect their perimeter, and those are good shots. But we're feeling like the fire was raging, blowing to the east, so chased it down and, you know, hopped back in the car. So I'll let you guys ride along with me here. When we're covering these fires, we prepare. We get annual fire training, fire safety training. We have all the gear we required: Nomex suits, fire shelters. I carry some police radios, emergency radios to listen in on the traffic. But you're thinking of common sense things and just thinking about escape routes and being aware of anything that might, you know, there's wildlife is an element. They're getting out of there too. But it turns that the fire had already burned through there. So I ended up having to go back into it to get back to where I was. And it was pretty dicey in there. I mean, the smoke is thick. I'm using the road bumpers on the center line there to kind of keep myself centered on the street as I'm driving back. And I'm trying to think, this is not such a good idea. But luckily I see another vehicle coming the other way, and I think, okay, if you got through, then I can get through. Problem was, couldn't find people working on the fires. I'm seeing the energy in the trees, the crowns are blowing up. But you know, and houses are going, but there's nobody there to be photographed by me. So that's my problem, right? So I get back to this shot, and this is where I realized that all that preparation and effort was pretty much wasted. I didn't get what I wanted. I did get this kind of weird shot, and sent it out. It got published, I think, I think we used it, but anyway, it went on the social media, and I got a text from my cousin later that day. She had been evacuated from Healdsburg, and she said that she saw the shot, and that was where she worked. So she was probably out of a job. So, you know, sometimes you can't get a person in your photograph, but you know what you're shooting in the photograph gets, you know, it does affect people, and they're there somewhere. And this was never more clear to me than when I was my first fire, which was in Santa Barbara County. This was called a paint fire. It had started in the mountains by an arsonist and raged down to the sea, took hundreds of homes, biggest loss of homes in like 30 years in the state. But I'm pretty proud of myself because here I am, I'm getting one of my first shots. I'm getting all the elements, fire, plane, got a human. But behind me is my best friend, the guy who's going to be in my wedding later, who I'm on his front porch basically, and I look and I see his eyes. He's just, you know, he's full of fear because he knows his home is not gonna make this. It's just an odd juxtaposition of the feelings you get when you're out in the midst. And we were talking before the session about do you help people or do you shoot? You know, what's the choice here? Sometimes you do both, and that's what I did. I shot the picture and we helped pack up some of the stuff, and he evacuated. His home was safe. He did survive. The home survived. And I just hope I never shot another big fire like that again. So those feelings are just kind of hard to reconcile. But that wasn't the way it was going to be. The next year in Oakland, I just moved up to the Contra Costa Times to work, and the Oakland Hills fire blew up 1991. You can see they pretty cool phones back then, right? Shooting film cameras and no fire protection, no gear, no clothes to wear. But you're photographing your neighbors in Oakland trying to save their homes desperately and not doing well and having to give up and run. Not everybody was able to get out of that fire. Santa Barbara lost one person. This one lost Lucy Mance, who was a colleague of mine at the Contra Costa Times. She had didn't come to work that next Tuesday, and we sent someone out to check, and yeah, her home was gone, and they found her remains later. 25 people died in that fire, and parts of Oakland were just left like city of chimneys. It was devastating. So, you know, I figured that's probably the biggest fire I'll ever cover. So, and it was for 25 years or so, until Santa Rosa, the wine country fire. This fire just was unbelievable. The amount of homes lost in that one little neighborhood of Coffey Park alone was just mind-blowing. I think, going up there the second night, I came back and forth from my home in San Francisco that first night. And when I drove back the second night, there was I see this glowing sign up ahead before dawn, and it's like fire. It's like, what? And I get up a little closer and I see it's a funky tire shop sign. That's of course when it goes bad, it knows what to say. And it's when the signs start reading fire in the state, you know there's something going on. You know, I was able to shoot mostly up in the place called Journey's End, which was a mobile home park, and it was pretty rough seeing all these homes lost. If you want to see some really great coverage of that fire, by the way, go see the Press Democrat, Kent Porter and his crew. They won a Pulitzer for their work. But you know, I was up there. I shot what I could, and not that day. Yeah, actually, I can't remember when this was. A day or two later, some of the victims were allowed to survivors were allowed to come back and see if their homes were. This woman's home did survive, but she never got to get back to it because it was condemned. And just trying to capture the grief on the faces, the loss, this woman's, looking for a cat she'll never see again. But the photo that really got me most was was at the end of my week shooting there. I was getting ready to rotate out. My last night, I was like, oh man, one last drive through Coffey Park, and I see this scene, and it just really got to me. That's when my emotions kind of broke, because, that red wheelchair looks just like the one my mother had been using, and I just couldn't help but think, if she were here, what it would have been like for her, or for the person who maybe somebody's mother who was in that chair, and what happened. It was kind of tough to handle. But it did run in the paper a couple of days later, and but it was because of a tweet I sent out. I just sent out this one tweet, kind of said, how I felt, and a couple hours later, I get this text from this reply from Ed Lopez. He told me that that was his mother's wheelchair, and she was alive, and it was really sweet. It was nice to took the sting out of that, and got to see his picture. He'd taken this earlier, but him and his mom, and about a week later, I got to meet her too, and we took a nice shot. So this would be a great place to end the presentation and let Jane and Jose take over. But I got a little bit more because the fires didn't stop. Campfire, Butte County, 2018, November. We got a call from our sister paper up there that their photographer was on leave and they had no pictures to take. So Sarah sent me up, I-5, under a big, thick black blanket of smoke. Getting up there is just I don't know how to get up there. Turned out this is Bill, their photographer. He not only was he not available to work, he was a victim too. He found out later that his house had burnt down and lost all his camera gear. So the editor, Dave Little, said, the only way you're going to get up there, I think, is this Needle Road on the backside. So he got me through a police break there, and I headed up by myself. And there's nobody around anywhere. There's this house burning. That's ammunition. It's ammunition blowing up in the house. And like, okay, let's move on. There's a scene of a propane tank venting by a burning car. I'm just not finding any of the people I need to photograph that are impacted by this fire. So first folks I see are this ambulance drivers queuing up, ready to leave town, and I get there 30 seconds later, they're on their way out of town. So I drive across the other side of town where smoke has started to clear, and I see another ambulance that didn't leave town, and I'm just not sure I want to look in the back door there. It's you just don't know, but luckily it was empty, and I was thank God didn't want to see any people there. But every scene I saw was like a still life, and I'm just like, where is everybody? I finally found some folks in a parking lot that were sheltering on the asphalt, the expanse there. They had clearing. They were able to shelter in place. And I found this one woman here, and I took this picture later, but it took a long time to get that. I saw her, and if you ever feel a failing as being a journalist, you feel a failing as being a human being. And I was like, went over to her and I asked her how she was. And she described the firefight she had with her husband trying to save her home for 3 hours. They were fighting it, this elderly woman. And they just had to flee, and they had nothing left except for their purse and the walker. I couldn't take a picture. I just wanted to give her. I asked her if she had any food, and she said no. And I said, I only have an apple. Do you want it? And she just lit up and she took that apple, and it was. I felt so embarrassed to give her. I had so little to give her, but she took it, and that was a shot I took as I left. And I got her name, and we passed it along, and some of her relatives were able to track her down later, and they survived, but others didn't. And the sheriff was left with the grim task of every day, how many more bodies he found. And then eventually the residents were able to start to return, and those were some heartbreaking moments. Cindy Hoover she knew her house was gone, but she says, damn it, I'm bringing some flowers anyway. So she brought those to brighten up the scene a bit. And this couple let me photograph them as they looked through their rooms. Only found one thing. This something from their honeymoon, little pendant, little trinket that said "Soulmates Forever." So there was little scenes of hope. The winter finally came, and the rains extinguished everything. And there was one moment there were Santa Rosa fire victims came up to Chico and had this conference with, met with the victims of this new fire. Santa Rosa was once the most deadly fire in California state history, and now these folks held that mantle. They shared their stories of, this is Santa Rosa, shared their stories of what they're going to be, what these people will be expecting, and how it's gonna, the road to recovery, it's gonna be long. Santa Rosa had, their way of life had completely been disrupted, and one of those little things of life that you lose is your, high school football. Their team there, the Cardinal Newman team, had been ready to play for their first state championship, and they didn't get that chance, and they didn't get a chance for 2 years, but they did 2 years later on their very home field. They won the state championship, and this was just this past year, and it was one of my favorite assignments of all time, just to go back and shoot them on their field. You can see, their field had survived, but their adjacent one did not. So my favorite photo of all these fire photos is this one here, them celebrating during a rainstorm flood at the conclusion of their state championship victory. And I offer this up to you as a segue to my colleagues, Jose and Jane. Jose is a fantastic sports photographer. He's going to show you some pictures, and Jane's going to show you some flood pictures here. And I'm going to set her up for that with a few frames that I took. I got up there, like Sarah said, and was got there early, and the rivers rose. Got some shots of these folks clearing out their what they could from their antique shop and raising what else they could. The waters eventually went to the ceiling in this shot, by the way. So all that work was for nothing there. People were screaming out of town and down the road. I got stuck. The waters came up. I couldn't get out. I shot folks doing their kayaking and getting out of their homes. Miniature golf park, and little ingenious boat making. But I wasn't able to shoot above. And this is where Jane came in, because Jane is like 1 by land, 2 if by sea, 3 if by air. She's a drone pilot and a boat captain too. So we got her up there. And Jane, if you're ready to take over the screen, I'm happy to stop. I'll stop sharing here. So I can get the cursor to that button.
All right. Thank you, Karl. Wow. Photojournalism is not about just what you see. It's about what you feel. And Karl, he's really one of the most compassionate photojournalists I know. His work really, really reflects that.
Okay.
So thank you, Karl. All right. So Guerneville was an island, and Karl was on the inside. I was stuck on the outside, but I knew I had to get in there to do some drone work before those floodwaters receded. It's not just about pushing a button. There's a lot of difficulties getting to the right place. It's really, no matter what the situation, it's all about the access. I rented a truck. I waited. Here's a little clip of trying to figure out how to get in.
I'm going to do the depthometer here. Not going to make it. Oh. Don't drop the phone. Bamboo is great because it has these little notches, so it's like a depth stick. Yeah. No, that truck will not make it through here. Will not. Okay, here we go. Guerneville, here we come. I'm on the Guerneville Express. I'm gonna walk in the last bit and get that drone up there. Over and out.
To weave a little humor in there in the narrative. So even though I had the kayak, a lot of the road was flooded, then not flooded for a quarter mile. So like solo, I couldn't really carry the kayak to get where I needed to go to walk the last distance in. But I ran into this guy off of 116. He had a house up on the hill, and he graciously gave me a ride. I bought him a half case of beer on my way back. So he had to give me a ride back out once I did the work. And I was never so happy to make it into Guerneville. I actually kissed the welcome to Guerneville sign. So, when you see the pictures in the video, you don't really realize the struggle in trying to just get there to do the work. The Russian River was at a height of 46 feet. And once I got in, there was a lot of teamwork involved because it's best practice to have a spotter for the drone. So Karl helped me spot as I navigated. And I'm going to show you this little video and a little example of land, air, and sea. The drone stills and video were really important just to show the scope of devastation in the community. It's enabled me to take the viewer and myself to places that we couldn't physically be, and get different perspectives, and including breaking it up by riding on the boat with the firefighters. That they were great about taking me out in the river so I can get some angles. I didn't want the video to be all about the drone. I wanted to break it up, so I shot from the ground and from the air. A lot goes into getting the drone license. I studied for about 4 months. It's almost like getting a regular pilot's license, and there's a lot of safety factors. You can't fly over people, over moving vehicles. There's a lot of things to consider when flying the drone. And I know about probably 10 photojournalists or more in the area that do also fly. So it's getting more and more popular. And it's a great way of storytelling, just to get the scope. And here's a couple still images, which we published as well. And you can see the Russian River behind the town. And that's the main street of Guerneville over to the right. So flash forward, we're going to talk a little bit more about drone here and about the safety and using the drone as a tool. But also, I have this little boat, and went out to get the Grand Princess as it was coming into the port of Oakland. Really, the best way to get those pictures before it arrived at the port were by water. And my good buddy and Jersey homie, Noah Berger, shot this wonderful picture of myself and Dylan Boucher, my colleague, as we were documenting the ship coming in. I just remember when I saw it come through the Golden Gate, I just thought, wow, life as we know it is just going to be changed forever. And it kind of was. It was like an eerie feeling. So here's the boat when it came in. Media, we were all staged way back, like off screen over here. So we weren't able to see this whole staging area and passengers disembarking. So this was a real storytelling picture. And there was no way to get that except by air. And then I went on to do a series of just emptiness in the Bay Area. It just struck me like just the total starkness. There was like a simple beauty in it. I mean, you have to find the beauty in these disasters sometimes. And I did lose one drone. I flew over a reservoir at one point. Oh, and if anyone guesses what this is, they can win a prize. Send your comments. I was flying over a reservoir, and all of a sudden my drone just dropped like a stone into the water, followed by another immediate splash, which was a bird which had taken out the drone. And I mean, there's just not a lot you can do about that. But other than that, incident free. Let's flash back to Occupy Oakland 2011. And this was Franco Gowa Plaza, City Hall. Before there were drones, there were rooftops. So you'd have to find a vantage point. Again, it's a real storytelling image to the scope. And we'll talk a little bit now about the safety aspects. Typical night at work, I was working very late shifts because they would break up the camps in the middle of the night. So I had my helmet, flak jacket, knee pads. I was on the ground a lot, just getting angles. And our newsroom windows were broken more times than I can remember, that I can count. And so we stuck together a lot for safety. I've never really covered something where people just kind of, cops and protesters, really didn't want you there a lot of times. It was really tough. And again, pre-drone, you climb up to get a vantage point. Laura Otis shot this wonderful picture at sunset, and I was up on the structure and missed this beautiful light, but got this image here when I got down after the sunset. You got a little more protesters, maybe a little more storytelling that it is a protest, but flipping back, I love this beautiful light. So there's an example how you can be with a bunch of photographers in the same situation and get very different shots. So yeah, really tough protesters, you know, often swinging at my camera, saying we couldn't photograph the tents. Just, I don't know, I used to say, look, we're just trying to cover your movement and, you know, again, introduce myself. You know, I'm a person, hey, I'm Jane, what's your name? You know, just try to diffuse the situation. It was the closest I've gotten to, like, you know, combat photography. I've never covered a war zone, but it was pretty intense. And again, the police were sometimes tough to contend with, sometimes okay. My brother was a police lieutenant. I have the highest respect, but he wouldn't have approved of this. I was illegally detained. Again, talked my way out of the situation, had a lieutenant who I knew come to my rescue and have the guy let me know this was in a public park during a raid. And another wonderful photo by Noah. And as he likes to joke, I was giving the officer lessons in photography. And this is the occupied camp afterwards, after the major clearing. It was in the middle of the night. I also photographed Occupy San Francisco. I don't have any of those images in here. Gas, the gas, you know, the tear gas was a big factor. Had to wear the mask, got caught up in it a bunch of times. One night I went out for the second time, not bringing the mask, thinking that the worst had popped off, and found myself in a tear gas situation and made this frame, not super sharp, but I'm going to show you a video so you can see why and get a little sights and sounds there. My experiment trying to stay in the tear gas as long as I could failed. I lasted about 5 minutes till my eyes, nose, mouth, everything was running. It was kind of a good test. I wanted to see what it could do. So here we go. So that's Occupy brought to life. The cops were, you know, loaded up, lots of intimidating weapons. You know, like anything in our personal or professional lives, we have to balance the moments, the good and the bad, find a happy medium. This one, I made my Christmas card that year. And here's not a good moment. This was one of the most intense things I've ever photographed. Covered hundreds, if not 1,000 homicides, sadly, here in Oakland. And I could feel the tension. This is back in downtown Oakland, City Hall, near the camp, and felt the tension. I thought to myself, wow, I hope nobody gets shot. And suddenly, pop, 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 5 shots ring out, and I go running to the scene. I was one of the first people on the scene. My legs were shaking. I mean, it was really intense. Came across these folks grieving at the scene. And one of the most important things to me is interacting. If you can, introduce yourself, express condolences. Don't just be that person with a camera or the media. You know, it's really important to personally connect with your subjects if possible. I think that helped in the making of that picture. My colleague, Randy Davis from ABC7 in the blue jacket here with the camera, he ended up getting a concussion. He was attacked by several people. It was obviously a very emotional time for everybody. And here are the protesters trying to take over the Kaiser Center. Lots of arrests. More tear gas. You know, it went on day and night for just months and months. I didn't cover anything else. Flashbang grenades. It's been interesting looking back at these images now. And again, the mask thing, the mask with COVID has come full circle. Other dangers, I was recently robbed in Alameda, of all places. It's a long story I'm not going to go into now, but situational awareness. Don't let your guard down, even in a place that you feel is safe. And again, one of those more peaceful moments. And now the evolution of the mask between COVID and Occupy. This was actually a really bad Army surplus mask. I would never, ever wear that again. It was cumbersome. It didn't work very well. I couldn't see very well. They make way better gas masks. And now for intense COVID situations, I have goggles, respirator with N95 here, so I'm not breathing out, contaminating somebody if I'm asymptomatic. Fortunately, so far so good. Same here with the snorkel mask, N95 here and here. And I haven't had to utilize that yet. That would be more like of a hospital setting. And in fact, they have implemented those snorkel masks in Europe as respirators. They've modified them, which is kind of fascinating. Flash forward to yesterday, social distancing at Cal National Guard flyover on the rooftop of Kaiser Richmond, keeping respectful distance, shooting with long lenses. It's all been kind of a challenge. And here's one of my reporter colleagues, Annie on the left, at a social distancing protest. And here's Dylan again, doing an interview from quite a distance away. Really got to up the gain on the mics. And decontaminating. Here I am yesterday, just wiping down the gear, having boxes in my car, hot zone for gear that maybe I don't have a chance to wipe down. I'm on deadline until I get home. My decon bench at home, I spray my shoes with Lysol before I even walk in the yard. I mean, I'm really taking this seriously. It's just bring on fires, floods, protesters, cops, anything. I hate this unseen enemy right now. And well, you know, that's about it for me. I don't want to take up too much time. I thank you guys so much. And I want to introduce Jose, something light and fun here. Jose is an extremely talented photojournalist who's good at everything, but specializes in sports. And his work, like Karl's, is really so much of an inspiration to me. So here we go. Take it away, Jose.
Hi, Jane. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Jose Fajardo. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. So I'm going to talk about sports photography. I've been photographing sports in the Bay Area for the past 20 years, and I love what I do. It allows me to travel, make new friends. In fact, here's a photo of me at work. No, I'm not the cute guy on the left. I'm the guy in the center being squished by the other photographers. One of my most frequently asked questions I get about my job is about my camera gear. And how do I travel with so much gear? So I thought I'd start a conversation by showing you what I do when I travel. So I usually carry about 3 to 4 bags of gear. 3 bags of gear, 1 bag of clothes, and my laptop bag. So one of the biggest problems journalists have when we travel is that our gear could be lost or stolen while we're on transit. So to prevent that, I carry all my essential gear on the plane with me, and the rest is checked in at the counter. As you can see, this is what it looks like when it's all unpacked. Depending on the sport I'm covering, it could be 3 to 5 cameras, an assortment of lenses. And when you shoot basketball, you're positioned on the floor, so I use a camping chair. But as you can tell, sometimes as photographers, we get blocked. So one of the tools we use in sports photography is the wireless remote trigger. And here's an example of that. Now, here at Oracle Arena, here's a nice panoramic shot of it. I'm going to show you with the use of little red dots that I placed all over to where I put all the remote cameras. It's pretty spread out. And so each location makes a different photo. So I routinely switch up the remotes depending on the photo I need to make. Now, for example, this camera took one of my favorite remote photos that I've ever shot. It was during Game 5 of the NBA Finals at Oracle in 2017. The camera was located at the corner of the arena, pointed at center court, and I was 25 feet away from it. And the photo was on a digital card with almost 3,000 images, which meant I had to go through all of them one by one. Now, one of the scariest remotes I use at the arena is the one I place high above the basket. This is what it looks like. As you can tell, I have to take an elevator to the roof of the arena and secure the camera using clamps and steel safety cables. The hardest part is focusing the camera because you have to focus on the bottom of the net. So you get the players' faces in focus and not their feet. So you get the players' faces in focus and not their, and here's another view of, I apologize. Here's another view of a remote from underneath a basket aimed at the key. If you notice, the camera's actually upside down. And it's great for rebound shots, and it's great for basically layups. So what do you do when you get to the arena? How early do I get there is probably one of the most frequently asked questions. And I usually get there about 2 to 3 hours before a game. But for a playoff game or an NBA final game, I usually get there about 8 hours early. The reason why is because I'm not the only member of the media that goes. For big games like the Warriors, usually, it's 50 members of the media. But for a finals, it'll be over 250 people. And they come from all over the world. Now, a lot of these reporters will ask some great questions. And then there's going to be a few that ask some very weird and awkward questions, would make for pretty funny face expressions. Now, I'd like to show you a collection of photos that I call my funny moments in sports. I try to find humor in my photography, and I'm always looking for something different and unique. It can be something from a badly placed penalty marker, or a duck deciding to compete in a high school swim meet, or a group of nuns from Moraine Catholic High School celebrating their football team after they scored a touchdown. Or in this case, a Cal marching band member that falls flat on his face while running out of a tunnel. And my all-time favorite, when Steph Curry gives you the googly eyes during a timeout. And I always wondered, was he really looking at me or someone behind me? Now, you might think that my job is not dangerous, but sometimes I get stuff thrown in my direction, or in this instance, kicked. One time, Steph Curry kicked one of his shoes at me by accident. He sometimes changes his shoes multiple times during the game, and because they don't feel right sometimes. So in this particular time, he kicked it and hit me right in the camera. And most recently, the second time was when J-Lo threw a football at me during the Super Bowl halftime press conference in Miami. Now, I could have caught the ball, but instead, the ball hit me in the head, knocked my focus out, and she quickly apologized at me and said sorry. Now, the funny part was I didn't catch the ball. All I got was a bruise, and I walked out with with nothing but this photo. Now, one of the things I love about sports photography is nice light. And you can make a mediocre sports photo into a spectacular sports photo using beautiful light. During a late evening, Cal was playing the Tennessee Volunteers, and I noticed that the evening sun was peeking over the stadium, and these shafts of light were falling on the field everywhere. So I got on my stomach, and I waited for the right moment. When all the Tennessee players stepped into the light, I made this frame right here. As you can see, it's like a nice dance here. Here we have the fog rolling in as a golfer tips his hat on the 18th green at Pebble Beach. My gut instinct was to head over to the green with all the other photographers and shoot him tight as he came in, but I kept saying to myself, the silhouette of the trees mixing with the fog, I'm gonna trust my gut. And I waited about 300 feet back long enough, hoping that the fog would stay there long enough so I can make this frame. And here we have a gorgeous sunset at a high school football game in Oakland, California. The sun just low enough to turn all the clouds pink like cotton candy. Now let's talk about the decisive moment in sports. These photos are difficult to make because they usually happen very quickly. And in sports photography, you only get one chance to make such a photo. And here's an example of that. In this photo, Seattle Seahawks Richard Sherman leaps in the air to block a pass intended for Michael Crabtree from the 49ers during the final minutes of the game in the fourth quarter during the NFC Championship. I spent almost 3 hours running back and forth, making hundreds of nice photos. But in the end, it didn't matter. The only photo that really mattered was this one image. Because of Sherman, the Seahawks would win the game and head to the Super Bowl. Here we have a junior rodeo in Livermore where the small calf decided it was payback time. And a Top Fuel dragster blowing up their engine at the starting line. A pole vaulter breaking her pole as she competes in the Olympic trials in Sacramento in 2004. And Oakland A's Milton Bradley breaking his bat after taking a big swing. And this one breaks my heart. This is Klay Thompson landing on his left leg, tearing his ACL during Game 5 of the NBA Finals against the Raptors. This was an emotional moment because Klay would come back onto the court to make his free throws and then hobble back to the locker room. And since we're on the subject, let's talk about emotion in sports. This is one of the hardest things to photograph because much like the decisive moment, it lasts only seconds, and depending on where you're standing will make a big difference in your photo. When A's player Chris Davis hit a game-winning home run, he knew he'd get a pie in the face. But when you add a Gatorade shower, it makes for quite a celebration photo. But I love this photo because it shows the look of surprise and confusion on his face. Last year, when the Warriors' Quinn Cook lost a friend to gun violence, I noticed that something was wrong right away during the player introductions. Quinn kept wiping tears from his face. When it was time for the national anthem, I decided to stay with him and made this picture. At the time, I had no idea why he was crying, but you could see how much pain he was in. Here we have a photo of pure excitement and joy when you win your first NBA championship. And let's talk about the Warriors. So I've been photographing the Warriors for the past 20 years. My first game was during the 1999 season. Back then, no one showed up, and you could pretty much sit anywhere you wanted. This is a 2001 photo of the head coach, Brian Winters. That season, the Warriors finished with a record of 21 wins and 61 losses. First thing I want to show you is the strangest moment I've ever experienced at Oracle. That would be the time recording artist Prince walked onto the floor with his shiny diamond-studded cane. There was a rumor that Prince was in the building, but no one would confirm it. But I was lucky and I had gotten a tip from one of the ball boys that had seen a Prince backstage. So I got into position and I waited. Prince finally came out with a minute left before the tip-off, and I was the only photographer that captured him walking in. After I made this photo, Prince would pass away a month later on April 21st, 2016. So in 2018, the Warriors had just signed DeMarcus Cousins, who was recovering from a ruptured Achilles tendon. They were attempting to win another NBA championship after winning back-to-back in 2017 and 2018. I made this photo during Media Day. And I just love this photo because you can see their smiles. Pretty much everything, they had everything to look forward for, but little did they know the roller coaster ride the whole season was going to happen. All right, let's talk about Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is one of the nicest athletes you'll ever meet. He's 6'10", wears a size 18 shoe. One day at practice in Houston, Durant was having a conversation with the Warriors general manager, Bob Myers. After 3 years of photographing Kevin, he was kind of used to me walking around, so he didn't really say anything when I walked up to him and placed my camera on the floor. Now, I wanted to convey the sheer size of his shoes, but at the same time, I had to be careful and show respect to him. So I made a few frames, and I backed away slowly, making sure I didn't disturb him. When I saw the image on my camera, I was like, wow. But then Kevin took out his cell phone, and I was blown away. The guy with the size 18 shoes owns one of the smallest iPhones they make. Now we're going to talk about Draymond. First thing you should know, he's very quiet and reserved, which is a lie. During Media Day, I was taking his portrait. He took one look at me and gave me a Superman pose, and then he stuck his tongue out. And I said that was it. Draymond is a defensive beast on the court, and he's one of the smartest defensive players on the NBA. He loves having fun on the court, but his true passion, of course, are his children. In the photo on the right with Steph, he's sticking his tongue out at his little one that's sitting courtside. And the complete opposite of Draymond is the guy that wears number 11, Klay Thompson. The guy is a three-point machine. He makes big plays, but rarely ever celebrates. But when he does, watch out. And he never wears a mouth guard. So you can always see him sticking his tongue out while he plays. And I think that's why when he's really having fun, the most fun at all. And finally, we come to, well, you know him, Stephen Curry. Well, Steph here is wearing his, as you can tell, it looks like his jersey doesn't even fit him. Here he is talking to, oh my gosh, I forgot his name, his former coach. I apologize. Let's move on. Well, first of all, here he is talking to Kobe Bryant, the legend. And Steph always tried to kind of basically feel like he belonged there, right? Now, let's fast forward 10 years later to a new arena, a new city, a different team. I made this picture of Steph as he walked onto the floor at the new Chase Center for the inaugural season. It almost appears like he was walking on air. We all know Steph loves to eat popcorn. One of the funniest moments was during the 2019 NBA Finals. A man brought Steph a bucket of popcorn before the game, and apparently it wasn't enough. As you can tell in the bottom frame, the next game they brought him a big old bag of popcorn and left it outside the locker room. When Curry realized he needed glasses, I had decided to shoot his eyes for a story on wearing contacts. I photographed him after a game while he was given a television interview. I was standing about 4 feet away from him with a 400mm lens, and the moment I clicked the shutter, a nice bead of sweat went down his face. At the right, you can see is the image of his tattoo on his ring finger. The A is for his wife, Aisha. I tried to make this picture in Oakland, but I couldn't get close enough. I had to wait till he played an away game in Texas where security wasn't as strict. I could shoot him from his left side during his warm-ups. It took me about 2 days, but I finally got the shot I had really liked. Next, a few frames are just for fun moments. Curry loves to have fun during player introductions. He's always looking around, jumping up and down. And we all know he can do all things. And one big thing, Steph is a big hugger. He hugs everyone. Here he's hugging Manu Ginobili after his last professional game before heading into retirement. And then at the bottom on the right side, you see him hugging his brother Seth after a game in Portland. And below, you see him hugging Kyrie Irving. Here's his famous tunnel shot at Oracle Arena. And finally, here's a shot of his, his injuries, his broken hand, upper left, his other broken finger that he had to play with, and, well, his many sprained ankles that he gets. But his family comes first. Here are photos of his daughters, Ryan and Riley, and his son, Cannon. And of course, his mom and dad after winning a game in Houston. Now, you can admire his talent while watching him on television, but to be there in person to watch him make a three-pointer with 1 second left on the clock, that's something you'll talk about for the rest of your life. And that's what I think about Steph brings to the game of basketball. He makes the impossible possible, and he makes it look so easy. And this is one of my favorite photos of Steph. He leaped into the air celebrating at a three-point basket, but it wasn't by him. It was by Klay Thompson, who's in the back. That's what makes Steph such an amazing player. He always celebrates the accomplishments of his teammates because it's not about him, it's about the team. And finally, my last slide. I made this photo with my iPhone as I was leaving the building for the final game at Oracle Arena on June 14, 2019. I had so many emotions coming over me after 20 years, but it's been a heck of a ride. I want to thank you for joining me, and I am passing this over to our managing editor, Sarah Dussault.
Thank you, Jose, Karl, and Jane. I see your work every single day, but it's really powerful to see it all at once like this. I really appreciate it. We went over a little bit, but we want to get to all your questions. So if you can, please stay with us. We will get to them. If you can't, thank you for joining today. If you have any comments or questions about this event, feel free to email us at vevents@bayareanewsgroup.com. Real quick, our next event will be June 4th, just a couple weeks away. It will be a discussion about the current challenges our restaurateurs are facing amid the COVID-19 crisis, as well as what their future plans might be. You can sign up at mercurynews.com/events. All right, we are now going to go to our questions. Lisa asks, many people think the virus is not real. I think some photos might help people understand what is going on in hospitals. I have not seen too many of these in the Mercury News. Can you explain why? I'm actually going to answer that real quick. Our director of photography, Laura Oda, has been trying very hard to get access inside hospitals. We have tried numerous times, but getting access to a hospital is difficult under normal circumstances. The hospitals have to abide by HIPAA laws. They have to keep your medical conditions private, and so they're always leery about letting us in. But now with COVID, the extra layer of, well, they have to worry about our protection, they have to worry about their patients' protection. They really don't want us there. And I think they're really busy just trying to tend to their patients, that they're struggling. We have actually been inside of a hospital, but it's been to do like a portrait of a nurse or a doctor, not actually sick COVID patients in hospitals. We have photographed some sick people in their homes, but that's a much easier situation to get access to. You only need permission of the person, not the person, the doctor and the hospital administration. I'm going to leave it at that unless Karl or someone else wants to add to that one. I'll move on to the next. You guys have anything else to add?
No, that's pretty good.
You nailed it.
All right. Okay. Daniel asked Karl, while you were speaking, did you experience anyone getting angry with you for shooting?
Oh boy, yeah, of course you do. I mean, imagine being there on your worst day of your life and having somebody come up and try and take your picture. I mean, that's a lot of people didn't like to have their picture taken when they were looking really great, let alone that time. So, I'm pretty non-confrontational, so I don't push it. I try and read body language. I try and express body language. I like to try and get, that approval, maybe a tacit approval from somebody. You get a wink of an eye, or just, I don't know. It's really hard to say what it is that makes you feel like, hey, this is maybe okay. But I usually work pretty far below that line where I think that, it just ain't worth it, man. I'm not going to try and, I'm not going to do an adversarial role with a photo subject unless, that's what the situation calls for. If it's like a corrupt politician coming out of the courthouse, I don't care what they feel. If they've been convicted, we're getting a shot. But, in the real world, real people, they've got my respect.
All right. Thank you. This one is from Sarah. This one is for Jane. When you were covering the protest about the protest, were you covering by yourself? She's wondering for safety reasons.
Yeah, sometimes I was out there by myself, and we would kind of pack up for safety, like the Chronicle, the Wire folks. And again, because there were times where that's where the best pictures were. And even if we were solo, we kind of ended up together if there was, a skirmish here or there or a fire. But then as it started to roll out after months and months and the protesters got more ornery, then we would pair up because we did have a couple incidents. And a Chew was jumped by a guy, had some of his equipment broken, I think a lens taken. So then we did start to finally pair. It was definitely a little dodgy being out there solo. I did have some mace, but I never had to use it.
Also, Ben wanted to know, did you worry about using a flash in the middle of the riot where it might be confused for a muzzle flash in a cloud of smoke?
No, I think the flash is more of a broad flash than a muzzle flash. And I'm more worried about protesters being more of aware of me because of the flash. And oftentimes I would purposefully just try to shoot available light without it, just bump up the ISO just to be more unobtrusive.
This is a good one from Diane. Have you ever been in danger when getting close to a fire or other disaster where someone had to help you get away? Karl?
Oh boy, no, I've never had to be rescued. But that, I don't know if you were on, if the questioner was on board when we showed the video of up there on Geyser Road. The heat was coming through the glass there, and the vents were not keeping the smoke out, and that was a scene where I was like, yeah, man, this is not the right thing to be doing. So that was my closest brush to it. When in the Oakland Hills fire, I remember that one because I was running around in my t-shirt, with my crazy hair and no gear, no hat, and that one guy that had the big hose, the little hose with the big fire, and he was about to give up. He offered to hose me down, so the embers were lit on fire. So that he was kind of a hero that day.
You took him up on it? He did?
Oh, hell
hose
yeah!
You down? All right. Jane, have you had a moment like that?
Like a dodgy moment? Not really. No, not. There's been times where I worried about trees coming down. in front of the car, not being able to get out, but I always have plan B and C. I try to suss out safety routes beforehand. So far, I've been lucky and been safe.
All right. This one is from John. Aren't you exploiting people when they are the most vulnerable? Is a Pulitzer worth your soul? Karl, I'll start with you.
Well, I have not won a Pulitzer like or something like that, so I wouldn't really know. I mean, our team won a team Pulitzer for the coverage of the ghost ship fire, and that scene was heartbreaking. You know, it was a focused tragedy. It was narrowly focused. It was in one site, not like these other big wildfires, and so that drew media like you never seen before, from LA, national, international, and also drew the loved ones of the survivors. And I remember making a photograph of a woman there who was obviously grieving. She got as close as she could. The police lines were still up, and I took the photograph. I didn't want to use it or submit it for publication because I didn't have her name. I didn't have her I didn't have her agreement to that. So 2 hours later, I saw her again, and I told her what I gently went up to her and told her what I shot and I just gave it to her. As far as, I would love to share this image with our readers of the pain that you are enduring, but I won't do it without your consent. So she gave me her name, and we ran the photo, and it was part of the package. So that's, but no, man, it's not worth breaking somebody else's dignity to win anything. I mean, to publish anything. It's like, I'm not going there. So.
Yeah, we never have a Pulitzer in mind when we're going to an assignment. What we are thinking is that what does the community need to know about what's happening at this event? What is important for everyone at large? And, as Karl is saying, we do ask for permission, and if people don't want to give it to us, then we don't want to run the photo. We do have, consider us to have high ethical standards. But it's never about Pulitzers. It's just about getting information.
Can I chime in on this one?
Sure.
I've covered a lot of events where I showed up and I'm like the first person there, or maybe the third or fourth. And I've covered fires, and I've covered car accidents and shootings, and you don't have time to think about anything else except for safety, and especially for other people. And I think that's the thing that people need to know, that when you're covering things like this, we run to things, we run to fires, we run to homicides, and we do this, but our intentions are never anything like that, but to inform the public and to provide images that tell a story, because that's what we do. We're journalists. And I mean, I was there that whole evening. I spent 3 nights outside the ghost ship warehouse, and every day I had photos that I didn't publish or send because out of respect for the subject, because there were some moments of pain that you couldn't do it. And I've experienced a lot of that, where I just sit there and I watch it, and I become part of that, and it hurts, and it sticks with you for a long time. And you still remember it, but the only image is in your head, and so, but sometimes you do push the trigger, or not the trigger, I apologize, but the shutter button, and you basically photograph things, because it's also history. It's also part of like something, that's really important to show. And so for people can see it. And so remember that. And I've had people come back to me many times and say, thank you for that. And I thank them for letting me do it. So anyways, that's my thought.
Okay. Thank you, Jose. All right. Actually, Jose, for you also, we have, with the Warriors so popular, how is the team and the players about giving you access versus out of town media? Because I'm sure they know you after all this time.
Oh yeah, it's fun, because it's like, in some instances when I travel with the team, I've become good friends with their PR person, Mr. Ray Ritter. And so when, you know, we go to like in Houston, or I mean, we've been to Cleveland how many times? 3 times. So basically they'll see me and I will have a conversation, or I'll have a text message with them and I'll say, hey, can I get into practice? And yeah, of course, come on. And so it's about trust. And that was one of the things I wanted to share with, like, the photo of, you know, Kevin Durant's feet. I wasn't going to make that picture to make him look funny or bad or anything. I just wanted to show, you know, his shoes. And so there's a big trust issue with when you cover the Warriors, because, you know, it's image, but at the same time, you develop a relationship. And I've had relationships with some players, but not a lot. And I try to keep my distance. My last relationship that I got close to was, you know, with Quinn Cook, because Quinn always wanted to get in the photo, which was kind of fun, because it was like, I just would make a photo and they'd be funny, but then they forget about you and then they do their own thing. But my favorite one was probably Andre Iguodala, because Iguodala would not let me photograph him at all. He would purposely cover his face, and so it became a game. And so through the years, you know, if they see you enough and they know who you're, and they, you know, they look at my stuff on Instagram and they'll borrow my image, and that's okay, you know. What do you do?
Mike wants to know what is different about shooting at the new Chase Center.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Well, you know, the lights are horrible. They have these humongous television screens now inside this, and they're so big that when they're actually changed from white screen to, say, yellow, the color fluctuation changes and the white balance changes, and it's not the same like Oracle. Oracle was always a consistent light. I loved Oracle because there was not so many ads. They made beautiful photos and down court. So it hasn't been great for photo. I mean, but it's been great for the facility, because we can easily access and go in through, you know, our workroom is really close. We can get onto the court within 20 seconds, where before we had 2 minutes to 3 minutes to run through crowded hallways, because Oracle was never made for that. But there's good things and bad things.
All right, thank you, Jose. Okay, Jane, this is for you. David wants to know if you ever run into much trouble using your drone, like needing permission when you are covering the cruise ship because you might be on private or restricted property. Also, it can expose things officials or others are trying to hide.
Yeah, occasionally I do. I play by the rules, so I don't shoot from restricted or private property ever. That's a big no-no. So I'm shooting from public access points on that. There's been maybe one time in San Leandro, there was a search for a shooting suspect, a shooting scene, and Alco sheriffs had their drone up. So I was mindful. I stayed way away from their drone, just got some overhead shots from a distance, but the guy came at me practically with guns drawn, you know. Put that thing down, but it led to a whole productive conversation with one of the sheriff's deputies, and we were trying to arrange a meeting about that, how we can work with, say, law enforcement, and within our rights, and do it safely and not impede their operation. So that's a conversation that got interrupted by COVID that we're going to have. Yeah, I mean, they don't own the airspace, though, at the port or, you know, above anywhere. So we are within our rights unless there is a temporary flight restriction by the FAA to document. I don't know. It's a wide angle lens. I don't know how much they could hide that we would see with that. But basically that's it.
Okay. Another question here from Syed. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. When you go out to cover a certain event, do you have directions to cover certain aspects, or are you using your artistic judgment? Jane, why don't you start us off on that one?
I would say it's instinct, heart, eyes, mind, news judgment all at once. To get the picture. We don't really, I mean, you can kind of preconceive a picture, but it really never turns out the way you or an editor might preconceive it. You plan, but like in that moment, It's just all your senses at once kind of operating.
Karl, do you want to add to that?
I can if he's not ready.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I like Jane's answer. Go ahead, Jose. At yours.
Well, I mean, when you show up to a scene, I think the thing is the first thing you want to do as photojournalists is basically document what people who can't be there, what you see. You know, what would other people want to see? And so that's one of my kind of like beliefs, is that when I document something and they don't have access to it, that's my job. So my job is to basically show you everything, details, things that basically if you were allowed to, but you can't. So I'm your eyes. And so that's what I like to think when I first show up to something. But there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, because what if you miss something? And so I know I got OCD, so I'm like looking at everything, and then I take lots of pictures, and then I slowly go back and step out, and then I look again. And so that's the kind of like there's a methodology. I have a method to when I do this, so that's how I do it.
Thank you, Jose. And occasionally you have an annoying editor like myself telling you exactly what I want to see, right?
Oh yeah, that's usually like when I'm driving there and you're like, this is what we have, and then we have can you make deadline at 1:30? And I'm like,
yeah. It's for the front page of the paper, make it good.
Yeah, hurry it up. By the way, caption it too while you're at it.
Yes. All right, this is a good one. This is from Diane. This is a similar question to what we had during our headliners portion at the beginning. Jose, I'm going to have you answer this one. I have heard that reporters and photographers are not supposed to get involved in the events they cover. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt the need to do something to save a life? I am on the emergency response team at Oracle and do that all the time, but I am supposed to.
Oh, is this for me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Well, I mean, I've helped people out before in lots of situations, and especially I think the most recent one was a car accident that I showed up to, where I was the first one there, and I basically was holding their head up, and I actually became like the person that stabilized their neck. And so and the thing is, you're human, right? So I'm human, and everyone's human, and I like to think that is by far the most important thing. And so I won't take pictures. I will put everything down and work at it that way. And when it's safe and it's appropriate, I will pick up my camera and keep going after that. I'm sorry, was there a two-part of that question? I apologize.
No, they really wanted to. Well, they wanted to know if you've had to save a life before.
Well,
because if you're technically not supposed to get involved into a situation, right?
Yeah, I guess when earlier I'm sorry if I didn't tell. A few years ago, there was an instance where someone fell into a canal, and I helped save their life by using our belts as a means, as a rope. I basically attached them together, and we used it to help them stay stable because the current was taking them. But most of the time is when we show up, there's usually already police and fire there. So we're observing.
Okay, thank you. So Sharon is asking, why are so many news organizations reducing photojournalist staff members? Uncle Bobs and moms of cameras do not have the experience or skill you all have. I admire all your work. Well, thank you, Sharon, for that. I do admire their work, and I do believe in the power of photojournalism, and these folks have been working for years to hone their skills. And unfortunately, newspapers have been hurting since the 2008 recession, and we've had to reduce staff all over the place, not just photojournalists. We've had to reduce reporting staff, advertising staff, editing staff, all kinds. But we are smaller, but we're mighty, and our hearts are still in this, and we're working hard every day to bring you guys the news for as long as we can.
Amen.
All right, let's see. Lighter question, Jose. Yeah. Kenneth wants to know, how many photos do you take during a typical Warrior game, and how many actually get used?
Wait. I'm answering that one.
Come on, Karl. Go for it.
That dude shoots thousands of pictures, man. It is nothing.
He does.
He does. No, you agree. You do shoot a little heavy, but you do what you need to. And Jose, probably you didn't come up in the film era, did you?
I did actually. I did, and they only would give me a brick of film when I first went to my first sports event, and a brick is usually around 20.
Yeah, I mean, when you have to like process the film, and change it every 36 frames, you shoot a little bit lighter. I think if you're coming from that bend in the woods, but I think Jose does a great job. You go ahead, man. Answer. I started.
No, it's true. See, what's funny about this is that Karl's edited me during the Super Bowl a few months ago, and so. It was a daunting task, and people don't want to edit me when I shoot because I do shoot too much. And the reason why I shoot a lot is because a lot of sports photos happen. There's a lot of stuff that happens before the actual frame, and there's a lot of stuff that happens after. And so I will follow that action, keep shooting, and then after the frame is made, the moment. The decisive moment, I keep shooting after because something will have a reaction now, or because people do things, and so I have a lot of I take a lot of pictures, and
you did not answer the question. How many?
All right, for a typical Warriors game, that's a normal game. I will probably shoot around 3,000 images.
Jesus.
But if it's a big NBA game, I'm shooting 3 cameras and 2 remotes. I could easily average between 2,500 photos per camera. So that's a lot of editing. And so I've gotten really good at editing, Karl. And throwing away a lot of photos, Karl.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we are going to take 3 more questions, and then we're going to go ahead and end our event today. So next one is from Anonymous. You are all taking extreme precautions with the virus, wearing so much protective covering. Whose guidelines are you following? Are you able to make your own decisions to what extent to protect yourself? This person lives in Hong Kong, where the public hasn't gone to such extremes, and their cases are low. So we are following the advice of the CDC, but also journalism organizations have sought out the advice of nurses and infectious disease doctors. We've gone to seminars to learn how to properly disinfect, how to properly wear our masks, and we provide our employees with personal protection equipment and Lysol wipes and hand sanitizer, although those things are hard to come by these days. You guys want to add anything to that?
That's pretty much it.
All right.
I remember when we shut down our offices, early on, and before the SIP, before the shelter in place started, it just seemed like such a radical idea to, for our little office to shut down. And now I look and see they're all shut down. So the thing I love most about it, just everybody pulls together and shares their knowledge about how to keep safe. And we even have our editor Laura Oda's mother is making homemade masks for us too. So it's a team effort.
Yes, thank you, Laura, for those masks. All right. Shay asks, how often are you as a photojournalist allowed to cover a story that you find yourself? And what advice do you have to give photojournalists who are looking for unique stories to tell without the guidance of an editor?
I guess I can answer that real quick. About a month ago, I came up with the idea about photographing families in quarantine. And I actually contacted Sarah, my editor, and said, hey, this is kind of an idea I want to do because I wanted to convey kind of a hope. And because all our COVID stuff was just basically, it's just really depressing me on the front page. And, it's news, you have to show it. But at the same time, I wanted to show something that was basically would uplift people. And so the interaction was, well, how are we going to do this? How are we, who are you contacting? And, we have to contact a lot of people, not just people that live here in Walnut Creek or Martinez, but we have to go around the whole Bay Area. So the conversations were always moving back and forth on different people, jobs, ethnicities. And so that was really very important because that gave a broader range to what we were doing.
And I'd like to say I've done a lot of that over the years. And to me, it's some of the most rewarding work when, your editors get behind you, you pitch an idea, whether it's a short-term thing like the drone photos, the abstracts of the emptiness, to a more longer-term project. like a year-long project on Bhutanese refugees, or a project I did on an Ethiopian woman who was severely burned by acid. These are some of the most rewarding stories for me when you make that connection with people and build that trust over time. And I also like to write a lot, so sometimes I'll write to help tell the story as well, and cut a video, sort of a trifecta.
All right. So real quick from Karen at the Chico ER, what is it like balancing work life and personal life? I ask because as a journalist, your lifestyle is heavily influenced by what's happening around you. You don't always have control over when and where you go to work. I imagine it affects your relationship with others. That's a good question, Karen. I'm going to answer real quick. I find that having friends outside journalism is really helpful to remember what the rest of the world is like, because we're kind of a unique group. And it's a lot of depressing news every day. It can make you a bit rough around the edges. And so I think having activities outside photojournalism really helps you stay a well-rounded human. Anybody else want to take that one up?
Yeah, I'd have to say, for me, I play in several bands. That's my outlet. That's my balance to some of the tough stuff that we cover. And my bandmates have been extremely patient, because they know we're rehearsing at 7:30. I don't know. I never really have a set schedule. It's kind of hard to plan. And my friends get that too. So they're really understanding, and they're really appreciative of what I do, and flexible. So it's nice to have people that understand you're not like a 9-to-5 person.
I have a high schooler, and my wife's a nurse. And so it's been quite difficult at home right now. But what we try to do the most is basically, keep our conversations up. One thing that nobody should ever, I don't watch sports on TV. It sounds crazy, but I don't. And lately I haven't been watching very much news, but I take a lot of walks, and right now I'm trying to clean my office because it's a mess, and I think I might be done in 6 months. So.
All right, last question. What is the future of photojournalism?
Oh, I knew you were going to do that one.
Wait, do we have an hour left?
No, if people need to jump off there, they can. But Karl, why don't you give us your thoughts?
I have high hopes for it. I pray for it. I'm toward the end of my career, so I don't, I just see such talented people coming up in our own staff and across the world. Our world is so much more visual than it was 25 years ago. I mean, think about back when, to take a photograph, you actually had to carry a heavy piece of metal around your neck and feed it with film and go to the pharmacy and have it processed or do it yourself. I mean, the people who made images then were committed. And now everybody's got a camera. So the types of images, the preponderance of them is, a little bit different, I think, than it was back then. Selfie photos dominate, Instagram feeds tend to stress the sweet and positive, and the ones that'll get the most likes and stuff. So people are presenting in a different way than maybe, photojournalists would tend to do that. So I think if anybody's going to provide a little spice to the new visual ubiquity, I think it's going to have to come from people who are really committed to telling it like it is, and trying to find a way to do it in an artistic and sensitive way.
Agreed.
Jane or Jose?
Well, I mean, for me, it's like I got into it late in my career. I thought I was late. I was 24 years old when I first started taking pictures. And now I'm 48, and a lot of things have changed. But I think that my journey now is to try to teach a lot of people, especially these journalism students, photojournalism students that are coming in now, to teach them like the way people taught me. And so to me, that's really important, because I want to honor the people that taught me how to do my job, and keep their knowledge and pass that on to other people. And like Karl said, things are different nowadays. Everyone has a phone a smartphone that can take a picture. But what we do is I'd like to almost say it is kind of an art form, in a sense, because that moment will only last less than a second, and that minute and that will be over. And photographs have this incredible power to change the world, and I think that the world needs that. And I think that there'll always be a need for photojournalism. I just think that it will be changing a little bit more as technology changes, and our world will change with it.
I'm hopeful for it as well. I mean, the shrinking newsroom thing is disconcerting, and always, you know, the specter of layoffs approaching. And I'm always grateful each day I can go to work and still tell stories. And there definitely is a distinction from the professional work to the camera, iPhone stuff. Although, you know, if you're there and we don't have it, we do appreciate that. I didn't start till I was 28, didn't realize you could even go to school for photojournalism. So, you know, like Jose, I would say that I'd like to impart my knowledge to others, because I had to learn from others, you know, sort of on the streets coming up.
Okay, that was our last question. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for all your lovely comments in the chat. I really appreciate it. And if we did not get to your question, I am sorry, but please feel free to email us at theevents@bayareanewsgroup.com, and we'll try to get an answer to you. Thank you again, Karl, Jane, and Jose. Your presentations were very insightful, and I hope photojournalism lives on forever. I do hope to retire in this business. But I know you have assignments to get to, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. Everyone, take care, and please be safe out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks a lot, you guys.